Hello and welcome to MOJO News. I'm Chester Nunn. The Monash University Student Union has cancelled the student election in a dramatic turn of events. This comes after an uproar over the decision to increase minimum working hours, effectively eliminating international students from the race. MOJO News reporter Saloni Mystery has been following this story and joins me in the studio. Saloni, what happened?
Chester, MONSU has postponed elections to week 12 of semester 2 amidst allegations of racism. They came under fire after they increased the minimum working hours to 22 for 9 out of the 13 council portfolios, effectively eliminating international students because under visa requirements they're allowed to work only for 20 hours.
Now, Saloni, I understand that MONSU has released a statement saying that these changes were never intended to make any student ineligible.
They did, Chester. They said that instead it was a recognition that being a member of MONSU Caulfield is a considerable weekly commitment, and that prior to the new election, the minimum weekly workload will be made clear to ensure all students, international and domestic, are eligible to run in the election. Now, the National Student Union has also chipped into the debate and has called these changes and labelled them as racist. They said that the regulation changes were made an hour and 15 minutes before nominations for the 2019 annual election closed, and 6 of the MONSU Council members have seen material benefit due to these regulation changes.
Now, Monash University has said that they are concerned that these changes may affect the eligibility of international students.
They have, Chester. They released a statement saying they're communicating with MONSU, and while the university recognises the legal independence of MONSU Caulfield as an entity, it must also ensure its recognised student associations continue to fulfil their requirement to represent the student body.
Okay, so how many people are actually affected by these changes?
So these changes have effectively got 6 international students. They can't stand for the elections anymore, 5 of which were running for the Go ticket. After all of these changes and after elections were postponed, one of the candidates, Nizam Shah Hussain, who was standing for the position of the vice president from the Go ticket, has said that this is just a distraction, and week 12 is in fact the busiest period of the semester, effectively reducing voter turnout, which the returning officer Glenn Donner, who was acknowledged but has said that it is a necessity since the bylaws demand that a 5-week notice be given before elections are run.
All right, some fascinating turn of events there, Saloni. Thank you very much for updating us on this unfolding story.
Thank you, Chester.
Tributes are pouring in for one of the AFL's most loved figures, former St Kilda player and media personality Danny Frawley. The footy legend died in a single vehicle crash near Ballarat on Monday when his car slammed into a tree. Reporter Gillian Area joins us now. Gillian, what can you tell us?
Chester, police say a man hit a tree in Millbrook, around 20 kilometres west of Ballarat, around 1:30 p.m. His injuries were so severe that he could not be saved. We found out later that evening that it was former AFL coach Danny Frawley. His death came a day after his 56th birthday, drawing outpourings of grief within the AFL community and across the nation. AFL fans put out their footy scarves and laid flowers for the St Kilda Hall of Famer outside the club's headquarters. Supporters also left decorated potatoes, paying homage to the legend known affectionately as Spud. Here is what some people there had to say.
He was a huge part of our club and such a wonderful footballer and a wonderful person.
Your first thought is, I really hope it's one of those hoaxes. And then, obviously it wasn't, and it was a tough afternoon.
The Frawley family has released a statement saying, "Danny provided us with strength, good humour and unwavering support during his extraordinary life. Memories which will be cherished and help us cope with his tragic death." The AFL will hold a moment's silence before each of this weekend's semi-finals to remember Danny Frawley. Chester?
All right, Gillian, thank you. A man who killed his fiancée with a car during a drunken rage could be free from jail in less than 12 months after being sentenced in the Supreme Court. Charles Mackenzie Ross Evans mowed down Alicia Key Little just days after Christmas 2017, but given time served, he could be paroled by mid-next year.
The grief of losing a loved one, compounded by the anguish of a killer's sentence. Charles Mackenzie Ross Evans could be paroled by mid-2020. Sentenced to a minimum 2 years and 6 months jail, Evans has already been locked up for 621 days. He was originally charged with Alicia's murder, but that was downgraded to dangerous driving, causing death and failing to render assistance.
This was done by someone who only weeks before had asked for permission to marry her. This has been a very long and exhaustive process. And let it be very clear that there are no winners here. No amount of time or penalty will ever reverse the outcome for our loved one.
Alicia was fatally injured at the couple's Kyneton home when Evans slammed a car into her, pinning her to a water tank with its tires.
We will all be forever changed because of this completely unnecessary loss of life. Alicia was fun, charismatic, adventurous spirit who had an unimaginable ability for human compassion. Her 4 children have been stripped of sharing a future with her.
The court heard their relationship was marred by domestic violence and the mother of 4 had decided to leave him 2 days before she died. Karuna Balasubramanian, MOJO News.
Now here's Sheetal Singh with a look back at the week's top stories.
More than 100 bushfires have engulfed communities in New South Wales and Queensland, with residents losing their homes in a matter of minutes. Dozens of properties have been lost, including the heritage-listed Binabura Lodge, one of Australia's oldest nature-based resorts. Exhausted fire crews have been working to gain the upper hand in what's been described as the worst start to the bushfire season on record. Overseas now, and the cleanup has begun in Bahamas, where Hurricane Dorian wiped out the whole communities last Sunday, flattening homes and leaving behind a mess of debris. Search and rescue teams have been scouring neighborhoods as hundreds remain missing, likely buried under the rubble. The Melbourne Fashion Week hosted its first modest fashion runway, showcasing designs from various cultures and lifestyles. The runway aims to promote brands and emerging designers from around the world, presenting looks from diverse backgrounds and religions. The Modest Fashion Runway director said the event was designed to make modest fashion more accessible to the consumers. One of Australia's worst child sex offenders has been sent to jail. Richard Haynes has been sentenced to 45 years imprisonment for sexually assaulting his daughter Jenny Haynes for 7 years. He will not be eligible for parole until January 2050 and will likely die in jail. Ms. Haynes developed 2,500 personalities to cope with the trauma.
It was a surprise attack. Hundreds of climate activists swarming the CBD and stopping cars and trams in their tracks. Police took no chances as protesters carried out coordinated flash mobs in various locations, chanting as they moved through city streets.
Young climate activists battle for their future. On a busy Friday night, hundreds of protesters swarmed the CBD.
Basically, we're going to be swarming together at a bunch of different locations and blocking them and causing a disruption and then dispersing.
Extinction Rebellion, a UK-based activist group, has decided to protest each week this month, demanding an action on climate change from the government.
October 7th, Carlton Gardens is the base camp.
To take action on climate change, we're here because corporations are destroying the planet and the leaders at the top of our society are in their back pockets.
Amid hundreds of police, public order responders and mounted branch, the activists managed to carry out the flock-style protest.
We have a kind of system where, not too many people, but just the necessary amount of people are in the know about where we're going to be.
Peak hour traffic and footy finals saw heavy police presence on roads to maintain order. We want the community to be aware that everyone has a right to protest peacefully without impacting the rest of the community. Police will not tolerate violent or obscene behavior, and offenders will be held accountable for these unlawful actions. After assembling at the State Library, the gathering divided into small groups, disappearing into the crowd.
Like a flash mob, but with a cause.
Later, protesting at the Burke Street intersection.
What do we want? Climate action! When do we want it? Now!
Curious and clueless, commuters began filming the wave of protesters.
I saw the police and I asked the question, where is the protest? They don't know.
I've heard of a protest, but I didn't know exactly what was happening and what for.
Tens of thousands of students walked out of their classrooms, staging protests, demanding an action on climate change. They now call out on the adults to take a step. A global climate strike is going to be held on September 20th.
And Tavleen Singh joins me in the studio now. Tavleen, what was it like covering the protest?
Chester, it was personally something I've never seen before. At 5 p.m., a group of students collected in front of the State Library and then dispersed into small groups, reappearing in swarms, and they were seen at 6 p.m. at the intersection at Burke Street. There was heavy police presence with public order response and mounted branch as well. And somewhere between 5 to 7, they were also seen at Melbourne Central, so no one knew where they were going to be apart from the organisers themselves, and it was a surprise and swarm that CBD had not seen any time recent.
Were police warned about the protest?
I think they were. According to the organisers, they had let them know that they were going to do a swarm-style protest, but they had not mentioned the exact locations and times they were going to be at. In fact, even after the rally and protest, everything ended, police were still there in front of Flinders Street where the last swarm was seen.
All right, we'll leave it there, Tavleen. Thank you. And next week, millions of people around the world are set to take a day off school and work to demand action on climate change. Climate activists in Melbourne have been busy preparing for the global protest, brainstorming slogans and painting banners.
John Knox is worried for his grandchildren's future.
I just became overwhelmed with a sense that we've just left it too late and that my kids were going to, and everybody who was young, was going to be going through a really, really bad time.
He's saddened by the world's inaction on climate change.
When you're living this kind of stuff almost 24/7, it's a really difficult place to get to where you think what you're doing is just not going to be enough, and that's a real problem.
The 63-year-old joined a group of like-minded people who are about to take matters in their own hands. Support for students walking out of their classes to protest was clearly visible.
I think it's really inspiring. It's a huge thing for so many students, and to walk out of school to tell the grown-ups that they have some work to do and they need to do better.
What started with a blank slate was quickly filled with ideas and creativity. The group from Friends of the Earth designing banners and brainstorming slogans for an upcoming global climate strike.
It is amazing for people that have been in the movement campaigning for climate action, seeing this new generation of campaigners emerge is a great inspiration, and it's really giving us a lot of hope and energy.
Using recycled material, these climate change campaigners want to put climate change on the agenda, demanding the government to declare a climate emergency.
Yeah, the federal government is failing to tackle the climate crisis, and it's that failure that is seeing people stand up and take to the streets.
The crafts workshop is just the beginning. Friends of the Earth will hold a martial training session this week to prepare for the global climate strike next week. Sheetal Singh, MOJO News.
The Prime Minister has ruled out providing any special treatment for a Tamil family facing deportation to Sri Lanka. Let's go to Nick Zachariah for more on this. Nick, their case has been delayed by the federal court.
Yes, it has, Chester. The federal court has ruled that the family could stay until at least the 18th of September to allow time for more evidence to be prepared. Their case relies on their 2-year-old daughter's right to apply for a protection visa due to claims she would be a subject to serious harm in Sri Lanka. The family, who were living in Billawilla for 6 years on bridging visas, were moved to a detention centre in Melbourne for 18 months. Channel 9 has raised a few eyebrows in Canberra after a decision to throw a fundraiser for the Liberal Party. It was attended by Prime Minister Scott Morrison, among other key members of the party. Staff from The Age, Sydney Morning Herald and the Financial Review publicly condemned management's decision, branding it as a major blow to their journalistic independence and integrity. A ticket to the party cost $10,000 according to the ABC, and while Nine management concede they could have handled it better, they say they tried to engage the government on important issues like press freedom. And in state politics, the Andrews government will not acquire the site where the Corkman pub once stood. This comes as fines issued to developers who illegally demolished the iconic pub, who were slashed from almost $2 million to $1.1 million. The state opposition demanded the government appeal the decision by the county court. Back to you, Chester.
All right, Nick Zachariah reporting there. Thank you. And now here's sport with Brittany Coles.
Thanks, Chester. Collingwood has unleashed their finals campaign with an impressive victory against Geelong on Friday night, securing their preliminary final position in 2 weeks' time. The Pies downed the Cats by 10 points at the expense of superstar Jordan De Goey, who suffered a hamstring injury that may just prevent him from returning again this finals series. And defender Levi Greenwood ruptured his ACL during the match, which ends his chances to play finals again this year. The Cats will face off with a second chance against West Coast in the semi-finals this Saturday. Richmond overcame Brisbane at the Gabba by 47 points on Saturday night, which also gives them a week off with the position in the preliminary final. Brisbane will face off against GWS in the semi-finals this Friday. Australia has retained the Ashes after winning the fourth test by 185 runs. Aussie batsman Steve Smith was player of the match with scores of 211 and 82. The New South Wales Swifts are in the Super Netball Grand Final after outplaying the Melbourne Vixens in a 13-point victory on Sunday. The Swifts will be up against the Sunshine Coast Lightning in the Grand Final this weekend. Canadian Bianca Andreescu won her first Grand Slam title at the US Open after defeating Serena Williams in straight sets. The 19-year-old was ranked 178th at the start of the year and is the first teenager to win the US Open since Maria Sharapova in 2006. Williams missed her chance at reaching what would have been a historic 24 Grand Slam titles, something that's only ever been achieved by Margaret Court. Lithuania head coach Dainius Adomaitis slammed Australia's playing style in the Basketball World Cup, describing it as rugby-like. The Boomers defeated Lithuania by 5 points during the first stage of the FIBA World Cup last week. And that's the latest happening in sport and another exciting week of finals ahead, Chester.
All right, thank you very much, Brittany. And that is Mojo News for now. You can stay up to date on our website, mojonews.com.au. I'm Chester Knight from the team. Bye for now.